Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to talk about Vecna's Necromancer mom. Here we go. Let's jump into it. All right, so we get one of the best. There's every single dot and tittle of the Vecna lore, actually stat block, right? So a lot of times we get a stat block, but we don't get lore. We got lots of lore on Vecna. We really know Vecna now, which is really fantastic. And this is an incredibly well-crafted, it's just an element. It's a Dungeons & Dragons element. So basically, what is this thing? Is Vecna a monster? Not really. Actually, I think the best description of Vecna is he's an evil god, right? He belongs in the pantheon. And the reality is, tell me if I'm wrong. Well, no, that isn't right. So Dungeons & Dragons has its own pantheon. Like Paylor doesn't exist anywhere. Like, he's only in Dungeons and Dragons, right? And Vecna's the same thing. He's an evil god in the Dungeons and Dragons pantheon. But he began as a mortal, right? Like, and so we already talked about Vecna's no-show dad, right? Very sad. And so what builds this epic level of evilness that we see in Vecna? Well, what we're looking at when we look at Vecna is generational evil on every side. All right, so let's get into it, right? So basically, so Vecna has this no-show dad. That's incredibly evil. If you're a human being and you have a progeny, if you have a son or a daughter, and you're like, nah, I'm not going to stick around for this, bye, that's straight evil. Like, thank goodness we have the Dungeons & Dragons clear alignment, right? You could absolutely put that into chaotic evil, neutral evil, or lawful evil. I think any person that has any of those, any IRL person that has any of those Dungeons & Dragons alignments, and I actually think the Dungeons & Dragons alignments absolutely apply to people. By the way, my IRL alignment, in my opinion, is neutral good. What do you think my alignment is? Let me know in the comments below. There you go. Maybe I'll learn something about myself. All right. So basically, Vecna's dad is straight evil from the gate. Like, you abandon a child. Come on, like that. What's more evil than that? It's hard to think. Like, I think very few things would. Honestly, I think that's worse than murder. Personally, it's more hurtful than murder. Just my humble opinion there. All right. So he has a very evil dad. Let's talk about his mom, right? First of all, his mom stays, right? So she gets points. So right out of the gate, right? No matter what, what kind of witchcraft Vecna's mom was throwing down, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, she still stayed for her son, right? Like, she stayed for her son and loved him and provided for him and tried to give Vecna the best, life she could give him, right? But let's talk about his mom. So first of all, she's a hedge witch. Woo! I love that term, man. Hedge witch, right? So basically, witches are like witches are a definite powerful thing in Dungeons and Dragons, and actually, witches are a thing in D&D. Witches are a thing in IRL, right? And the reality is, and we've had a little bit of fracas with some witches all up in America, like Salem witch trials. We had some witchcraft going on there, and we have a history of witchcraft in America, right? Witches are definitely a thing, right? So basically, Vecna's mom is determined as a hedge witch. As soon as you hear a hedge witch, right? What that means is it's not as much book learning, right? She's doing spellcraft with what's being told to her from other witches. There generally aren't, they're not sitting in arcane libraries like reading books, right? They are remembering spells generationally, right? Passing them down from mother to daughter, passing them down from sister to sister, passing them down in their witch cabals, right? And exchanging these memorized spells. These could be things that they created in cauldrons. These could be incantations. These can be like, things they do with candles, all this kind of stuff. But when you hear hedge witch, this ain't a book witch, right? Like, this ain't a book. This isn't a wizard. Wizards can be male or female, right? And they learn from a structured, like, literary written history, right? And that's literally why they use spell books. Hedge witches don't have no spell books. They have all this stuff in their memory, and it's very like it's like the difference between a doctor and a chiropractor. It's a lot more informal and like, hey, let's try this out, right? You know, like it's not as much book learning, right? All right, that's just my take. All right, my humble opinion there. All right, so hedge witch, right? She is like, you know, and the other thing now, when you hear hedge witch, right? One, you're like, oh, well, that's not good, right? There are some good things about hedge witches, right? One of the things is the arcane wizards, right? They literally, like, what do you think a wizard's tower is, right? It's like 20 stories above, you know, it's like 10 stories above the ground, so the wizard can literally just read his books, learn his spells, and not help. You know where hedge witches live? They live a little beyond the wood line from your village, right? Like, you know, 300 feet in the woods in a disheveled hut, right? But they're accessible, and you could go to them. You're like, hey, get me, hey, can you get me a love potion? Hey, you know, I got the gout. Can you clear this condition, right? And they're like, yeah, let me whip up this potion, right? Throw a little magic on it, you done, right? Like, so hedge witches are very accessible, right? So she was the kind of witch that was probably connected to her village, and she is helping people, right? But what kind of help is she giving? All right, so she hedge witching it up, right? She's doing informal magic. There's nothing wrong with informal magic. Necromancy, yeah, there's something wrong with that. And one of the things is, I am saying this now. I'm the first one, right? Like coming out on this. You can see it clear as day. WotC going from woke to based, and they're doing it quick, okay? Because they see that this country is going to be run by Republicans in 2 years, and it'll be run by Republicans for the next 20 freaking years. All right, that, like, the Democrats are done. They have failed America so hard, so fast, so brutally. They're finished, right? So there's going to be a shift in American power, and I think Wizards of the Coast sees that, and they're taking Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition based, right? So one of the things it's based is, you know what's woke? Necromancy's for everybody, good and bad. No, it's not. It's magic from blood, from bone, from death. It's evil, right? And that's exactly what you see here with Vecna's mom, right? So they say, okay, Vecna's mom is a hedge witch, right? So, but then they're like, what kind of magic she practicing? Well, a bunch of wizards came up into her village and goes, hey, hedge witch, you practicing necromancy. And Vecna's kind of like, well, you know, like, and I'm sure they question him, and they're like, hey, what's up with your mom? And he's like, well, she makes a great soup, and she loves me well, but you're right, there are a bunch of corpses up in the house all the time, and those and a lot of times I'll come down and their spell's done, and half the parts in those bodies are gone, right? Like, Vecna knew, right? His mom's be doing necromancy. So, this group of wizards, they oust Vecna's mom and exile her, right? And separate her from her son. And they're like, hey, you can't be just sitting up like 300 feet away from the village, man. Be gone with your necromantic evil magic, right? And they exile her, right? Now here's the kicker, right? They then put Vecna into servitude, and he serves as two things. I think first he serves as like just general labor, and then he serves as a scribe, specifically as a scribe, right? Because he was smart, and you know why he was smart? Because his hedge witch mom was. It takes like to remember all those spells, even if you're not like highly literate, to remember all those spells takes a lot of intelligence. So Vecna was smart, right? So Vecna does his thing, and you know, and the reality. And so here's the thing: Vecna is put into servitude, but the Lord does not say. And then he was like, "My mom's is innocent. I'm going to go avenge her and make sure that she's able to come back and help the villagers." Like Vecna knew, yeah. He's like, yeah, mom's was definitely a necromancer, and it wasn't like the good necromancy, which don't even exist. That's just something that the woke Wizards of the Coast brought into 5th edition. That'll be gone soon. We're going to based Wizards of the Coast, right? Because they want to keep making money, right? And the reality is, I definitely think we're entering into a world where Republicans are going to have the majority of the wealth in America, right? That's a shift, because Democrats have a lot of it, but right now Democrats are like there's no debate even among Democrats. They realize they've cocked it up so bad. Like, this Bidenflation thing is so bad, and the whole world is just so broken. Even they can't deny it. There's open discussion within Democrats. They're not even saying, yeah, we did it right. They're like, yeah, we screwed this up, and we don't know what to do next. So the reality is, you have, so his mom is not innocent. She is doing evil necromantic magic. At best, she digging them corpse ups, right? That's tomb raiding. That's not good, right? You shouldn't be disturbing people's corpses while they're in the grave. That's the best we could hope. Other than that, she might have been getting bodies, like, she might have been bodying people just to get her magic, right? So you got a necromancer hedge witch in your area, you got a problem, right? Because, like, you know, that's not, they need corpses. Corpses are part of their magic, right? And the only way you can get corpses is murder or digging them up. Neither one of them is legal or good, right? So the reality is, what we see with Vecna is we see generational evil. And this is really, really interesting aspect, an incredibly interesting exploration that Wizards of the Coast is going into. I'm really fascinated by this, and I've been thinking about it a lot. I'm incredibly blessed. My parents were good people, right? They were evangelical Christians, and they tried to live up to the gospel. They failed at times, 100%, right? And they certainly were sinners, to make no mistake. I'm a sinner, they were a sinner, but they were good people. They were like, hey, the Bible tells us what's good, and we are trying to obey the Bible, and the majority of their actions were good. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with them getting to heaven. They're going to go to heaven because Jesus' righteousness is put upon them, right? It doesn't matter that 51% of their actions were good. And actually, I would say 66% of the actions of my mom and dad were good. But guess what? I've been thinking about this a lot. There are kids today who are growing up in generational evil. One of the parents goes, you know what? I birthed you. Bye. That is hardcore evil. That's just, you can put it in any one of the three brackets, but that's evil. It doesn't even come remotely close to neutral. You abandon a child, it's worse than murder. I truly believe that, right? So you have, you know, not a small number, like a lot of kids today, you know, being faced with evil from one of their parents from the gate. Then the next one, you know, sometimes there was a lot of talk about this in books about Boston. They were saying that in Boston, between like 1910 all the way up to like 1980, there was generational bank robbers, like literally, you know, bank robbers who passed the skills of the trade, safe cracking, all kinds of things, from safe cracking, just general villainy, you know, and all the practices of the trade, from father to son, father to daughter, mother to daughter, generational evil. So Vecna is really an exploration of generational evil. And boy, the timing is fantastic, because we have never needed a real, actual cultural look at generational evil and what happens with a child when both of their parents are evil, right? Vladimir Putin's a perfect example of this, right? Like, in order to be as dedicated, in order to fly the banner of oppression, aggression, and hatred as strong as Vladimir Putin has done, I don't believe you could start. That's not first generation evil. That's third, fourth, fifth, maybe sixth generations of evil. I think there's generations of evil there, where people who were dedicated to evil in his past, and you're seeing, like, because, like, you know, the things that are getting reported out, like, they're saying, like, you know, that Putin's army is shooting civilians in the back and burying them in mass graves. That's evil, right? That is just, and that doesn't come from, oh, I'm going to turn into evil. Like, yeah, you might turn into evil. Maybe you get into a bar fight and, you know, stab somebody with a bottle and kill them. But, like, you know, like, evil at the level we're seeing in Ukraine, that's generational, in my humble opinion, right? And I think Wizards of the Coast is taking us there. They're taking us into an exploration of generational evil, right? And then once we look at that and we see what that looks like and how evil that comes out, which is Vecna is just pure evil. He is dedicated to evil, and he has followers, right? And when we look at all that, then we can say, okay, well, how is this generational evil broken? What? And then we can address that in Dungeons & Dragons, in our Dungeons & Dragons campaign, and we can address that in IRL. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.